Hey there, CJ Math students, and welcome to homework 3.3. So we're using percent of a number. This is a concept we know, but again, we're trying to use our mental math. So the first thing I want you to do is to think about an estimate for your answer. So in every problem, I want you to have an estimate for your answer. So 50% of 50, an estimate would be something like it's going to be definitely less than 50, and maybe my estimate is going to be equal to, in this case, this is pretty straightforward, 25, right? Because 50% is half of 50, right? So just take 50 divided by 2, and you get your answer of 25, right? So you're going to want to try and look at number 2 and do the same thing. Number 3, again, I want an estimate. It says 20% of 50. Well, it's definitely going to be less than 50. It's also definitely going to be less than 30, right? So you can say an estimate would be somewhere around, I don't know, you could say 10 or something like that. For right now, just saying, hey, my answer is going to be less than 30 is fine. Now here's how we're going to do this. We're going to say, since I know the benchmark of 10% of 50 is simply swooping your decimal place one time to the right, 10% of 50 is 5. So then 20% of 50 is just 5 times 2, right? So your answer in this case is 10. Another way to do this is to say 50 times 0.20, and to just simply do this multiplication. 0 times 0, lay your egg, 0, 10. It's not 1,000 because, again, we've already said our answer has got to be less than 30. We have 2 decimals, and we need to swoop our decimal twice, right? Once, twice. So yes, I want both of your methods here, both the mental and the actual math method on number 3. Number 4 is going to be a little bit difficult, but if you say, all right, my estimate, if you think, what is half of 45? Well, that's tough. You know, half of 44 is 22, so it's got to be less than 22.5. And if it's 20%, so first of all, your answer's got to be, my fault, it's got to be less than 45, right? And then less than half, so less than 22.5. And then we got to actually do some math here. So 10% of 45, again, just simply take that decimal, swoop it one time. It's going to give you 4.5. So then 20% is just 4.5 times 2. If you had $4.50 plus $4.50, what would you get? You get 9. So again, you're going to take that and you're going to say 45 times 2.0. You're actually going to do the actual math there. So 0, 0, lay your egg, 0, carry a 1, 9. Again, it's not 900. We've already said it's got to be less than 22.5. You've got 2 decimals, so you need to swoop twice. So 9.0. Right, so 75% of 40. So your estimate. So right off the bat, you should be like, okay, it's got to be greater than. First of all, it's got to be less than 40. You know, because we're taking 75% of that, but greater than 20 because 20 is 50% of 40, right? So for 75% of 40, you could do a couple of things. First of all, you could change this to a fraction. You could say, hey, I want 3/4 of or multiplied by 40. That's one way you could do it. The other way you could do it is you'd say 40 times 0.75. And then one final way you could do it is to say, hey, I know what 10% is, multiply it by 7, and then multiply it by half, which would be kind of difficult. Let's do the fraction way first. So cross cancel. I can divide both by 4, so that becomes a 10. And when I multiply straight across, I get 10 over 1, or just 10. So does that match my estimate? Yeah, it's, sorry, don't mess that up. This should be, when I multiply straight across, this should be 30. My fault. And that's a good look at my estimate there, because I said, hey, wait a second. My estimate said I had to be greater than 20, and I just got 10. So I knew I had done some math wrong. So that's where the estimate comes into play, right? And then here, if I'm doing the actual math, I get 0 there, I get 20 there, I lay an egg, I get 0 here, I get 28 here, I add it up. Again, my answer is not 3,000 because, again, I said my answer has to be less than 40. So I got to swoop my decimal twice, once, twice, and my answer is 30. Okay. If I were you, I'd pause and try and do number 6. Number 7, it says 180% of 110. So first of all, this is going to be an important estimate. If I'm taking something that's greater than 100%, my answer needs to be greater than 110, right? So that's a good estimate, and it's almost 200%. So it's going to be pretty close to about 200. All right. So here we can go. We can say 100% of 110 is 110, right? And then 10% of 110 is 11, right? How did I get that? I just swooped the decimal once back. And then I have, how many 10% and 80%? I have 8, so times 8, that's 88. And then you just need to add these two together, right? 110 and 88. And what do we get when we add those together? You get 198. 198. So let's prove it mathematically. So let's do the 110% times, now here's the key thing. 180% as a decimal is 1.80. It's not 0.180, it's 1.80. Now you know your first row is going to be nothing but zeros, so why don't you just start off by laying an egg, and then we can say 8 times 0, 0, 8 times 1, 8, 8 times 1, 8. Lay 2 eggs now, because we're on the technically the third row. 1 times 0, 0, 1 times 1, 1, and 1 times 1, 1. And I add those up, I get 0, 0, 8, 9, 1. Again, my answer can't be 19,800. I said my answer is going to be greater than 110, but about 200. I have two decimals, so once, twice, boom, I got 198, just like when I did the mental math. All right. Let's look at number 9. Again, 145% of 120. My estimate here says, my answer has got to be definitely greater than 120 because I'm taking 145%. Now this is almost like 150%. So like what would be 50% of 120? That's like 60, right? Half of 120 is 60. So my estimate, a good estimate, would have to be 120 plus 60, or about 180. We'll see. All right. So first, let's say, okay, 100% of 120 is 120. 10% of 120 is, again, just swoop that decimal back one time, 12. And then how many 10% are in 45%? Well, I can get 4 out of that. So that's 48. And now here's the key thing. What's 5% of 120? Now that's tricky because if 10% is 12, then 5% should be just half of 12. So that's just 6. So this would be 6. So I add on 6 to that. And so 48 plus 6 is going to be 54. And so now the two numbers I really want to add are 54 and 120, because all of that together, the 10%, the 100%, the 10% are 4 times it, 40%, and the 5% give you 145. So your answer should be, if you add those up, 174. So now let's do the math on that to make sure that we were correct. So 120 times, again, it's 1.45. It's not 0.145, right? Now this one we can't just lay an egg since we've got a number here. We got to actually do this multiplication. So 0, 10, carry your 1, that's 6. Lay an egg. 0, 8, 4 times 1 is 4. Lay 2 eggs. And then 0, 2, and 1. So let's add that up. That's 0, 0, 14, carry a 1. That's 7, 1. And again, my answer can't be 174. I have 2 decimal places. So I need to swoop 2 times, once, twice. So I have 174, just like I got when I did my mental math. Right? Flip over the back side. Right? So we got ratios and percents. So 3 out of every 20 dogs in the U.S. are golden retrievers. Write this ratio as percent. We have 3 out of 20. And remember, you can make base 10. So write that down. Make base 10. Oops, not base 10. My fault. Not ball say 10. So ask yourself, what can you multiply 20 by to make it a base 10? Oh, and you can multiply it by 5, right? When you do that, you get 15 over 100. So what is that? It's 15% of all dogs in the U.S. are golden retrievers, right? Number 3, Shaquille O'Neal, again, hit 11 out of 20 free throws in a 5-game series. Write this as ratio as percent, so 11 out of 20. Again, we're just going to make base 10 times 5 times 5. Shaq wasn't very good at free throws. He hit 55 out of 100, or 55%. Right? Healthcare, over 15% of Americans do not have health insurance. Write this percent as a fraction. So 15, remember, percent is per 100. Per 100, so it's just going to be 15 over 100. And then you're simplifying. You're dividing by the biggest factor they have in common, which is 5. And you get 3 over 20 using your reference sheet, hopefully. Oh, sorry. Let's write that a little bit cleaner. All right, the federal government owns about 13/20ths of the land in the state of Utah. Write this fraction as percent. This should be old news by now. Again, you're just making base 10 times 5 times 5. What do you get out of this? You get 65 out of 100 using that reference sheet. So that's 65%, right? Number 8, this is a tricky one. In a recent survey, 11 out of every 50 people in the United States were aged 65 or older. So the key ones are right here, 11 out of 50. So there's your fraction, and you want to make base 10 out of it. So just times 2 times 2. Again, you want to write it as a percent. So your answer is not 22 over 100. It is 22%. All right. Number 6, I want you to skip. Don't even want you to do it. We got to talk about how to do a problem like that first. Number 4, you want to write it as a fraction, 38% as a fraction. And same thing on number 2, you want to write 29% as a fraction. Right? That's it. Call me if you have questions.